Hello and welcome to this presentation about classes, methods and objects. So get yourself a drink and a biscuit because this is going to be an interesting ride. There's quite a lot to get through here. It's actually kind of hard to know how to tackle this for people who aren't familiar with object-oriented programming, and I would say that I'm actually pretty unfamiliar with it myself. It's hard to know which direction to come at it first. So this might be the first time you look at it. I've also got things about the principles of it which I actually don't directly cover here, although if you understand inheritance, generalization, encapsulation, and there's another one I can't bring to mind, this is going to go down smoother. But let's see how we go. So first of all, there's our learning intention. Students can explain what classes, methods and objects are in the context of object-oriented programming. So first of all, what is a class? Well, a class is a blueprint. It's basically saying, hey, here is a model of things that I'm going to create or I'm going to use, and I'm going to describe what the properties are, or the attributes. Another way of thinking of that is data. So it's going to describe the data or attributes. So over here we're going to describe the color, the model and the battery type, or the battery charge, I think they're probably thinking of the robot, and the behaviors, which are called methods. So we're going to tell it it can move, speak or charge. We also often have a method for creating an object. So it's kind of a blueprint, it's an abstraction in itself of this is the plan for a robot or for a house or for a person or for a maths model, and then we're going to create particular instances or objects of that. So it is a thing, it is in fact a data type itself, but it is used to create meaningful objects that we use in our program. And if you're a bit confused, that's okay. So it defines a custom data type with specific properties. By properties we mean what data we're going to hold about it, and methods generally do something. As I said, we use it as a template for creating objects, and it encapsulates data and associated behaviors, so it's kind of like a bundle of them, but we can also have some security settings on bits of the bundle to say who can see them and who can read and write to them. So here's what it looks like in PHP. I've started with PHP because it's actually probably closest to the theoretical model. So up here we say class is car. Now interestingly, in PHP normally if it was a variable we'd have a $sign in front of it, but a class doesn't have a $sign. And so class is car. We're saying the public attribute of brand, the public attribute of model. That means they can be seen from other places in the program. They could actually theoretically be written from other places in the program. We've got this public function called construct, and that is a constructor method, and that is going to make a new car when we want one, and that tells it to have the brand and the model. And then we've got a public function, which means that this is a job that it does, and when you say drive, then it will echo and some information. This just means in this context, or in the context of the model itself. So for instance, we say my car equals new. New is just not part of the name, it's saying hey, this is a new instance or object, and I'm handing in the information it needs, which is Ford and Mustang, which is the brand and the model. And then I'm calling the method called drive, and if we look up here, there's drive, and so I'll say this Ford Mustang is driving. So it's a little bit complicated first up, but that's what it looks like. In Python it's very similar. Class of car, we've got this as the constructor class here with the 2 underscores before and after. Brand and model again, we're defining just a regular method, which is drive, and that prints basically the same, and actually using it is fairly similar. Conceptually it's all the same, it just looks a little bit different in the different languages, and that's JavaScript, and I'm not going to talk you through that bit by bit, except that it's a Toyota Corolla. Fantastic cars, Toyota Corollas. You couldn't kill them with an axe, they just go and go and go. So in your own words, what is a class? I expect we're going to have a variety of different responses there, and hopefully we won't get people copying and pasting. So now that we understand what a class is a kind of blueprint. So what is a method? Well, first of all, it functions like it is like a function being what I think of as a kind of robot sidekick or a programmed sidekick that operates within a class. There are different types of methods. You can have an instance method that will only work on specific objects. So if our object is car and we're creating a Ford Mustang, then an instant method will only work if you're trying to talk about a particular car, such as a Ford Mustang. You can't use it on cars in general. A static method actually belongs to cars in general, not cars in particular, such as the Mustang or the Toyota Corolla. You have constructor methods, and a constructor method is how you create a new instance or object. So it's saying, hey, when you make a new car type, this is the information you need to do it, and it then goes ahead and creates it. You also have a getter method where you can actually say, hey, from outside, can you tell me what the value of this variable is? But it won't let you change it, it'll just let you get it. And you can have a setter method where you will say, here's what a variable is, and you have permission to go in and change it. So there's quite a lot you can do with methods. Each method has an access modifier, and I talk about this in another presentation about encapsulation, but they can be public, which means that any other part of the program can look inside and use it. Protected means that you can only use it from within this class or child classes. Again, I talk about that in the inheritance presentation, that you can have parents and children and children of children. So protected turtles all the way down, and private is actually just within that class. So I'd have to check this, but I would imagine that if you create an object from a class, then that object could use that method if it was private. But that's actually something I probably should check. So here's an example of some methods in Python. So we've got a class called cylinder. You'll notice up the top that we've got the init, or what I think of is the, not what I think of that as initialization, but that's a constructor class, or a constructor method, and that is saying, hey, we're going to create a particular object which is a with this radius and this height. So now in the computer's brain it knows about this object. We can then use this method here, calculate volume. Now you'll notice that that actually doesn't have an access modifier. So in the three languages that we use, if you don't have an access modifier, then it's automatically public. So this would be public. So that'll calculate the volume and return it to the user. The next one will calculate the surface area, and the last one is just a string, which if you try to print basically the name of the class, it'll say, hey, this is what my label is. So that's what methods look like, basically mini programs within your class. Now, I said earlier that a method is basically a function within a class. There are some differences. So functions are independent and are called directly by name. So if you've got a function called double this, you can just call it with double this, with the brackets of course, from anywhere in your program. Methods are associated with objects or classes and called what they call dot notation or arrow notation, but basically you've got to say the name of the class and then you've got to say the name of the method. So you can't just say, hey, double number, and it'll go and look through everything for it. You might have to say, maths buddy dot double number, because you've got to tell it which class to look in. Methods have access to this object's attributes, so the attributes that are stored in that object, you can have access to it. You don't necessarily have to pass it in that information like you would with a function. It knows about the object. And a function gets all its necessary data handed in through parameters normally. You can do it with local and global variables, but the best approach is through parameters, and there's a separate presentation about functions. And methods support object-oriented principles like encapsulation. and inheritance, but mostly encapsulation, which is what we're looking back here about having the access modifiers. Okay, so in your own words, what is a method? Again, I think we're going to see a variety of understanding here. Finally, what is an object or an instance? I'm using these terms pretty much interchangeably. I'm sure somebody knows a way in which they're different, but for our purposes, we can think of an object or an instance as being the same. So your class over here is a blueprint. It talks about properties. It's got color, material, number of doors. It talks about behaviors and behaviors. So it's just a set of ideas. It's a framework of ideas. But we're going to create this instance called Blue House, and it's going to have its own attributes, and it can have its own behaviors. Although I think, we're using the behavior that we defined up here. So it's actually reaching in and saying open door. Well, I inherit that because I was made from this class. And so this yellow cottage is a completely separate building, but it was made from this template, and so it has the basic structural elements of it. So it is a concrete instance created from a class blueprint. It contains specific data values or attributes, and it is capable of performing behaviors which it gets from the class. It represents a distinct entity with a unique state, so what you do to the blue house shouldn't affect what you do to the yellow house. And it exists only during the program execution, so when the program's running, it understands these things as separate. It's not necessarily permanently saved anywhere. So let's have a look. First of all, this is Python, by the way. We have a class of a robot, and the constructor sets up the name, the model, and the battery level. And that's all that constructor does. We've got a method that says hello, and we've got a method about battery charge. So in terms of how we use this object, we're going to create an object. So my robot equals, now robot is the name of the class. So we're saying, hey, go to that class and give it Sparky X145, and those are going to be its defining values. Then we're going to print myrobot.name. So we're saying to this object called myrobot, use the method name. Now, if you look back, method name actually belongs, and you can't actually see it in here, but, it's not method, it's attribute, name. The name was actually set up at the class level. But because this robot was made from that class, it all matches up. So, my robot, what's your name? Sparky. My robot dot say hello, so the name of the object, but it's inheriting in it, or it gets that method that was assigned to it when it was created. So when you're created by a class, you get access to all of these actions. So that's how that works. All right. This might have been confusing, but let's test our understanding. These are true-false questions. A class is like a blueprint or template, while an object is a specific instance created from that blueprint. Well, that's true. In a single program, you can only create one object from a specific class. That is not only false, but it is wildly false. The whole point of it is that you are able to create multiple objects as needed. This is kind of the point of the exercise. A method represents a behavior or an action that an object can perform. Well, spectacularly true. You must define a new class every time you want to create a new object, even if the objects are exactly the same type. Again, spectacularly untrue. It's about creating multiple objects from a template. And attributes or fields store the data state of an object, while methods define the logic. Absolutely true. So, you might want to watch this a second time. You might want to read up on it. You might want to toss the idea around a bit. You're probably not going to get it all from just watching it this time, but I hope that it's been a useful introduction to you.